Hey, Senator Crusaders, coming up about a half an hour, a little less than that, 20-some minutes. We're going to go back to the Capitol and go back to the Senate trial of the president, the former president's impeachment. The former is the key part of this whole ridiculous story. Before we go to our next guest, I just came across this tweet. New House impeachment managers, that's the Democrats, will unveil previously unseen Capitol security footage as part of their presentation today. Democrats will offer a devastating case against President Trump, according to senior aides on the impeachment managers team. Breaking news, the Democrats say they're going to do an amazing job today with their presentation. They say that Trump committed, quote, the most heinous constitutional crime possible. We have the goods, we will present the goods. I don't know what the constitutional crime is that they're even accusing him of, quite frankly. Scott Hounsell's here, one of our friends from Red State. What's up, Scott?
How goes it, Mike?
Excellent. Good to talk to you, brother. Before we get to the Democrats' case, did you see the Trump's lawyers yesterday and how ridiculously horrible of a job they did?
I was actually
Can you hear me?
President's response or President's team's response.
I'm sorry, Scott. Say that one more time. I lost you, brother. Say it again.
It was a disaster. It was a disaster. Making it so far off with everything that they were presenting. They were all over the map with their statements that they made, their comments. That even in the intro, he said he was working for the wrong side. I mean, it was a disaster all through.
Like, what were they trying to do? I don't even know what the attempted effort was, and they weren't even skilled at it. Like, I almost feel bad talking about these guys. It was as if we just like randomly picked two guys off the street. They did so bad. What was their even intended goal?
So I wonder if they really what it comes down to, I genuinely believe, is that everyone obviously has been blackballed by the media, has been put into a camp of craziness, that if you work for the president, you're nuts. And so the choices for the president's defense team were so thin that this is the best he could come up with. I mean, Alan Dershowitz was extremely upset with the response that they had. And it was insane, like I said, to watch it occur. Was how can you reach this level of incompetence with someone who is probably being paid a pretty penny to do what they're doing?
Yeah. It doesn't bode well for what they're going to do after the Democrats' attempt here. So what do you make of what the Democrats are going to try to do today, right? As they said, it's the most heinous constitutional crime possible, what the president did. What fever dream are they living in, that what happened on January 6th was the worst thing imaginable, worst thing possible?
It certainly was bad. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you shouldn't have people violently entering the Capitol for any reason. But the fact remains is the worst thing? Probably not. And in addition, can they definitely say that it wouldn't have occurred without Trump? And the answer to that question is no, they can't. To me, it's as I've said previously, it's political theater. They know the result is already known. There's not something up in the air of whether or not this is going to end up, convicting the president. The result is already known, that they're continuing through with it anyway. Probably as a means of having something to stick to certain people within the Senate in 2022 and 2024. But the fact remains is that it doesn't change the result of the impeachment trial. And so this is just purely political theater at this point. The Democrats know this, and yet they continue down the same path that they're on right now.
Not only is the result known, as you said, meaning he won't be convicted, but there's no punishment that can even be administered anyway. So the whole thing is completely worthless, other than the political things as you talked about. But what?
Well, actually, I don't mean to interrupt, Mike, but there is one thing. The only thing that they are doing is preventing him from running for federal office again. So if they were able to convict him by some crazy stretch, the worst thing they could do is prevent him from running for president again. That's essentially it. So yes, you're right. There is no official punishment. They can't boot him from office. They can't prevent him from running from office again at some point.
We had a constitutional professor on yesterday, Scott Tillman, who he makes the argument that you can't even do that because it was Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7 or whatever, says officers of the United States, and his claim is, through some roundabout way that I can't repeat here, that the president isn't an officer. What that really means is he couldn't be appointed to another position in the White House. So he couldn't be a like a secretary position, but he could run for elected office again. So, but his ultimate point was, it's up in the air on even that point. But
they would have to file a suit of some sort in court and probably go to SCOTUS, and that would be a long, arduous process, and one that, you know, knowing exactly how the members of the court have voted in the past with things that I don't agree with necessarily, I wouldn't have the faith that they would make the appropriate choice anyway. So here we are sitting here with this issue.
Yeah, and for a man who would be 78 at the time, and it's a moot point, and it's ridiculous. So let's talk about the politics.
Correct.
How could, let's say Trump's lawyers were the most skilled, like no one's better. They're like the master of political judo. How could they turn this around and have it backfire on the Democrats?
Frankly, I think the point is that I think what the issue is yesterday is they didn't provide a bright line or a line between what is conviction and what is not conviction, or what is Trump was guilty of something, or what was Trump was guilty of something. In my particular case, could you prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the riots in the Capitol would have occurred absent Trump? And the answer to the question is no, you couldn't prove that. But you also can't prove it the other way, and that is that they would have occurred with Trump, or they would have occurred. They wouldn't have occurred without him either. So the fact is that you can't have it both ways. You can't have it. Trump's guilty of this. Trump incited this riot. It wouldn't have happened regardless. But the fact is that a lot of people would have been up there anyway had it not been for Trump. Trump's rhetoric, or whatever the argument they're using, was violent or.
Yep. I want to, Scott. We got to run.
Cited the violence.
We got to run. I want to have you back on again next week, because I love this article you wrote at Red State about the Capitol Police and how they say that they're exempt from Freedom of Information Act requests, which is bonkers. And that's where a real investigation needs to be made in who dropped the ball in whatever level of law enforcement, the mayor of D.C., whoever, because this whole thing could have been prevented if they had just a decent level of security. So could we chat again next week about that?
Right. Absolutely, good sir. Looking forward to it.
Let's do it. Thanks, man. Redstate.com, Scott Hounsell, Hounsell. And just look up his most recent article about the Freedom of Information Act and the Capitol Hill Police, which should be the story that we should be focusing on during this trial as well. All right.